Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Pat O.
Pat. Oh, how was your weekend?
Fucking incredible. Uh, it was very interesting. Very interesting. You might be listening to this because you follow me on social media, and this is where I'm making my official statement about my upcoming open heart surgery. So last Wednesday, I had a test. I had a echocardiogram, which is basically like an ultrasound test that they, that you're familiar with when you're pregnant. It's like that, but they use it on your heart. And when they did that, they found that I had a couple things going on. I had an aneurysm on one of my valves that at the time measured 6.2 centimeters. And I also had a prolapsed valve. Now, those of you that are prolapse was the only term that I immediately
Stop.
recognized when they were transferring this, when they were giving me this info. I was like, well, I know what that means. Um,
Stop.
you know, so yeah, and neither one of those are good, but when combined, they're even worse. So got these results on Thursday. Had emergency meeting with my cardiologist on Friday. That led to a CT scan, which is when they shoot your veins full of like radioactive dye, and then they do basically like an MRI thing, and it gives them a little bit clearer of a picture of what's going on. Same thing as before. They saw the same shit as before, but this time the aneurysm was a little bit smaller. Uh, it was a more accurate test, but instead of being 6.2 centimeters, it was 5.8. The reason that's important is because anything over 6 centimeters in size could go at any time, and like Jesus Christ, don't, if you're going to sneeze, don't do it in here because you could drop dead. Anything over 5.5 still requires surgery. But when they did the initial test, I was in 6.2, so everyone was like, "Holy shit!" And then when they did the second one, it that scaled down a little bit, 4 tenths of an inch, or 4 tenths of a centimeter. I'm sorry. So put me in a little bit better of a situation. So that's where I'm at, and unfortunately, I'm off work until further notice because, kind of as I allude to on this podcast from time to time, I have a physically strenuous job where I do lots of manly roughhouse shit,
Yeah.
which is no longer good given my current situation. Um, Probably have surgery sometime in the near future. I'm meeting with two surgeons this week alone, and it's going to come down to who's got the best reputation and who can schedule me the quickest. And that'll be it. And then I'll be laid up for 4 to 6 weeks recuperating. I'm 40 years old, so the surgery itself, even though it's invasive and crazy, scary sounding, um, isn't necessarily going to. I stand a fairly good chance of surviving it. I'm not really worried about that.
Open heart surgery has a 98% success rate.
Yes, and
So,
that's with like including like 60-year-old men and shit. Like
yeah.
I'm 40. Like I'm not too worried about that. I'm more or less just worried about the logistics of being off of work for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest pain in the ass, and having just to fucking call these people and like do everything, and like it's just I'm not one of these people that's like super medically savvy. Like I go to doctors and I do that stuff, but like just the whole hospital scene, man, it's a little bit different than just going to your doctor's office twice a year for a physical and when you got like the flu or something. And yeah, so it's been an interesting weekend. But I'm here, and I will be here for the foreseeable future until I'm not. I don't know when that's going to happen necessarily.
Oh,
And
yeah. You can't listen. If you die, I'm going to be pissed off if you if you don't make it through this
no,
surgery.
no,
I'm
no,
like,
no.
seriously, Pat, 2%? You couldn't fucking handle 2%?
No, I don't mean like that. I don't mean like that. I just mean like I don't know how quickly when I
Oh, for
do.
your recovery.
No, with just with the surgery, like whenever they can get me in, I don't know how quickly that's going to happen. I got one
Oh,
more test on. I got one more test on. Well, today, if you're listening on Wednesday, then it's going on as we speak.
right
Um,
now.
where they're
They're inside of Pat's prolapse right now.
no, unfortunately, they're so the third and final test is they're going to stick a camera down my throat and then photograph my do basically the same thing they did before the ultrasound, but they're going to do it from the inside, from behind the heart. and I guess that offers a different view, and they're gonna hopefully get more info from that. Which, like,
Yeah.
honestly, is like a huge like trigger of mine. Like, I do not like the idea of tubes, like breathing tubes. I don't like the idea of like putting things down my throat. It
Well,
reminds
you're not gonna be awake.
I'm gonna be awake-ish, but I would honestly, I was like, can they just stick it up my ass? Like, I hate to be a slut. I hate to be a slut about it, but like, I would much rather just fucking grab my ankles and like fucking get on my back like a turtle and have them shove it up my ass than have to lay there like a fucking abductee while they shove some kind of fucking contraption down my throat. Like that to me is way more like invasive and fucking terrifying while I'm
Yeah.
looking at it while it comes at me and stuff. Like, oh fuck that. You know.
So you're more worried about that part than the actual surgery itself.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not too yeah, I don't want the surgery I'll be out for.
Sure.
The thing on it's called a TEE. That thing on Wednesday or today, I should say. The thing earlier today. I think that I'm not looking forward to because I'll be awake for that.
Yeah. Well, since I mean you're time traveling, how did it go today? Did it go?
I don't fucking know. It's there's no test that's gonna come back and they're gonna be like, you know what, dude? And then and here's the thing, like this is how like I guess you could say I'm in denial about it because I don't want to. I really don't want to tell people because I'm like, and there's people that like I need to tell. Like I needed to tell work. I needed to tell like I have obligations like that I of things that I do where I'm
Sure.
like, oh, I don't want to fucking say anything because like I'm still in this mindset where they're gonna come back and they're gonna say, oh yeah, that was just we fucked that up. There was a smudge on the X-ray and you're fine. Or like, yeah, you know what, it's bad, but we're just gonna monitor it and you'll get surgery down the road. Like my biggest fear is that I've said as much as I have at this point, and then it's gonna end up that like I blew it out of proportion and everyone thinks that I'm like this ridiculous over dramatic like
I completely understand. I keep my my medical stuff very not very secretive. I mean, I'll mention it in passing, but not everybody knows, and it's just because like I don't want there to be some type of I don't want to be perceived as being overly dramatic or what
right.
have you. But that stems from childhood trauma and just having my mom's very much like, oh, just she's she's like, oh, get over it, you'll be fine, all you do is bitch about how sick you are. And I'm like, what? She's like, you're not even that sick. I'm like, Mom, I got fucking cervical cancer. She's like, you're not that sick. Swear to God, that's how she is. So I don't talk about it a lot because or just different things. And so I can definitely commiserate with you there because it's hard. Medical things are hard, especially in it feels like there's a lot of erasure that goes on with people and their medical issues. You're just always it's like a pissing contest. It's like, oh, I'm more sick than you, and it's like that's stupid. That's ridiculous, and it
like
shouldn't be that way.
dude, I knew a girl that faked cancer. Like when I
That's
like
horrible.
one of my drummer's like girlfriends legitimately fake cancer. Like this was like during the MySpace era, and she would like take pictures with like a bandana on and her eyes squinty
Oh
and
my
act.
God.
I know, I seriously, and she didn't even do it to fucking raise money. She did it because she pissed everyone off in our circle of friends, and she was looking for a way to disappear. And yeah, she fucking. It's
You could have
insane.
just disappeared.
You
Like,
could have just dipped, man. No one would have given a fuck. You didn't have to come up with a fucking like plot line about it and shit.
wow.
But like, yeah.
Those
So
are the worst kinds of people.
yeah, and I think that and because I know that there's those people out there.
You're scared of being lumped into that group of people.
Right. I actually had
Yeah.
someone message me today, and their partner broke up with them in an Aldi bathroom, and they
Oh,
posted this on Facebook, and I was like, for real? And they messaged me and they said, I know, I want to die right now. And I wanted to be like, fucking, you need some perspective, bitch. You know what I mean? Like, you don't fucking know. But yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Being broken up with in an Aldi bathroom, that really sucks.
so yeah, now I'm in this weird limbo spot. I ain't working, so I'm just kind of chilling around the house, and hopefully you and I record some fucking backup
Yeah,
shows. Uh,
absolutely.
and they want to measure 3 times so that they only cut once. It's like once they get you on the table and they crack you open like a lobster. It's not like if they're wrong about something they could just like like, oh shit, we forgot something. Let's sew him back up and run out to AutoZone and come
It's a
back.
process, right? I mean,
Yeah. So
that's just the
I mean,
medical world. I mean, that's the way it is. So there's Pat. Pat is so you guys know he's getting surgery,
there you
open
go.
heart surgery.
That's it. I'll be fine. And it's
He
one more thing. It's not lifestyle. This is something hereditary that I got from my fucking dad. One of the only things I got from him. Thank you very much. Um, but yeah, he died of the same thing when he was 46, and it was never communicated to me specifically. We just knew like he died of a heart attack. So I always just checked my blood pressure and my cholesterol, and I was always good. I got physicals every year. Everything was fine. And aneurysms don't show up with either one of those things. This was found because if you guys listeners of the show will remember, there was that long stretch where I kept thinking that I had COVID, and during that stretch they did an x-ray of my lungs, and when they did the x-ray of my lungs they saw that I had an enlarged heart, and yada yada yada, one thing led to another. Boom, that's the only reason this thing got found. It's not, and it's like, I hate to use the word genetic defect, but it's like a genetic defect. This is not because I eat Burrito Station. This is not because I love Wendy's, or because I drink beer, or because I do the Wired podcast. This has nothing, not that I used to smoke for 25 fucking years, honestly has nothing to do with any of that. So if anyone, I know how people like to fucking hate, and empathy is in such low demand these days that like people are like, well, fuck him. Have you ever actually seen a picture of Pat O'Sullivan? He looks like, he fucking lives at Burger King. Like, I only eat there 3 times a week, and that has nothing to do with this. So let's not confuse the point.
I blame our friend Greg Morrill for being so nice to you that he literally made your heart grow like the fucking Grinch.
Twice, yes, twice its normal size or whatever.
So Greg, this is all your fault. It's all your fault, Greg from All the Weird. Everybody,
Right,
go blame him.
right.
Take your hate over there, or your love, whatever, and then also give him an enlarged heart. I don't know. I shouldn't wish that on anybody. I'm sorry. Take that back. I don't put that in the universe. But no, you'll be all right. So if anybody's wondering about the future of the show, of course, obviously this has been very interesting. But I think for the most part, yeah, you're gonna be okay. Um,
Oh fuck yeah, we're gonna get some episodes with me on fentanyl out of this. Like,
that'll be great. Yeah,
at the
that'll be
very
awesome.
least,
That's
yeah.
what I said. I'm like, you'll come home, we'll record a great episode. You're all fucked up. It'll be wonderful. You'll probably have more time than ever, really, to research some of these topics. So hell, you'll probably be better than I am at some
I'm
of them.
finish that cryptid D&D book finally.
Oh
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, that's the good thing. You're gonna have more time to work on, because like the first probably 2 weeks, you're probably gonna be miserable as fuck. And then after that point, you're not going to be so miserable anymore, but you're going to be bored. So, it'll give you plenty of time to start working on other projects or whatever.
right.
The show is going to resume. We've got some plans in mind. And if not, I've always got, we've got wonderful friends in the community that would be more than honored to step in as, substitute Dr. X for a minute. But
Only
um,
girls. I'm making that request right now. Only girls.
that's what you say. I
Do
don't,
not
can't be
cuck
another
me.
guy.
Do not cuck me on my own fucking show. No, it's got to be Kinsey. It's got to be V, and it's got to be V. And there you go. That's the only people allowed to sit in this chair.
Well, there you go, guys. There's Kinsey and V. Both are the only people worthy enough to be the stand-in.
Right.
But no, we'll figure it out. We'll be all right. But I just want to put that out there. In the meantime, like I said, we've got plans to make sure that the show continues as normal, so it shouldn't affect anything. But in the meantime, give all of your wonderful, great, good vibes to Pat during this time, because it is going to be it's going to be different. Things are going to be different for a minute, and that's fine. So,
Right.
but you'll be all right. But so it's safe to say that you're not going to be at CryptidCon.
Unfortunately, Jesus Christ. Yeah, unfortunately not. Although I tried to do the whole like, oh well, I guess we'll have to schedule it for after I get back for Kentucky, right? And my life was like,
Right.
you're not going anywhere. So,
Yeah, well, and
you
that's
know,
what, that's fine. I don't want CryptidCon to kill you. So let's not do that. But that's okay. That's okay. There's other stuff coming up, in the future, which, Pat will be at. So
yes.
I will still be there at CryptidCon.
I should be 100% by January 1st. That's what I'm hoping.
Good.
That's really the timeline that I'm giving myself here. We'll see what happens, but
That would be great.
Yeah,
I'm hoping for, the end of January, but we'll talk about that on a different day.
sure, sure.
So anyway, so that's what's going on. That's, right now, that's where we're at. But,
How
we're
was
here.
your weekend?
It was okay. It was pretty good. I did some filming, for the documentary,
Nice.
and that was good. Yeah. So I mean, that was it. Really, I didn't do too much. I've just been kind of trying to gear up for that. I'm gonna have a Christmas party, and so I've been doing that as well. And my exciting weekend's gonna be this weekend. So,
Right.
but yeah. I mean, we did, like I said, we did some filming. I'm really trying to get this documentary together. Just because you know some other things came up, and I'm sure people have seen that I'm very sad. I have a really terrible case of imposter syndrome, and I really feel like I'm not doing enough for just my career in general, and that's silly because I've done a lot in the last 2 years, and I need to be nicer to myself and reminding myself that, like, if I would have seen my life now in 2 years, I mean, back then, I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have believed that I've made the friends that I've made, or that, the milestones I've hit, or, we just got the news this week that the show's in the top 100 for the educational podcast. It's amazing.
Top 67.
Top 67. Right. We're not even like 99, right? I was like, okay. So we can't be doing too badly. But which is, good for us. But but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's definitely made me want to work on things a little bit differently, and it's made me want to kind of prioritize things a little bit differently. And the sooner I'm able to get this documentary done, even though I have a timeline and I have a deadline for when it's supposed to premiere, that doesn't mean I can't finish it early and start working on the next project. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's going to be. So yeah, so I've been doing a lot of that, and that was, of course, a lot of fun to get, back into the filming and things like that. So I've just been busy. I've been working. That was my weekend. Super exciting stuff. Um, I'm sure I'll have more to share, next week about my weekend, other than, obviously being devastated that, your best friend's having open heart surgery. I mean, that kind of sucks, but
Oh, thank you.
but anyway, today, like, again, like we mentioned, it's actually Monday. It's the 15th of November. It's a big day. You know why it's a big day, Pat?
I do. It is Mothman Awareness Day.
It is. Yes, you have to be aware of your Mothmen. It is. It is the 55th anniversary of not the first sighting of Mothman, but the first recorded sighting of what we know as the Mothman, which was the Scarberry mallet sighting that happened, like I said, in 1966, 55 years ago. So people have heard me share the story. If you know about the Mothman, you know about the story, but just for all intents and purposes, two couples were driving around what we now know as or what they called then the TNT area. And that's just what kids did back in the day. They were kind of joyriding. They saw this freaky dude kind of walk around the power plant building, and then he sprouted wings and chased them through this area. And the town kind of made a big stink about it. They went to the police. They held a press conference, and then wham bam, thank you ma'am, it was everywhere, all over the area. Newspapers were talking about it, and everybody then flooded down to the TNT area to search for the Mothman, which then culminated, of course, in more sightings. Again, it wasn't the first sighting that ever happened of the Mothman just in this area, connected to that flap. Of course, now we know that Mothman's tied to many other things, but it is Mothman Day. So happy anniversary. Happy birthday? I don't know. Happy Moth Day.
Coming out day. I mean, that's what
Happy
he
Mothman coming out day. Yeah.
revealed his presence to the world. So I guess it's kind of a coming out day.
It is coming out day.
Yeah.
Yes. So, that's a big deal. I agree. Somebody had mentioned, people over at, Wild and Weird West Virginia said that they're trying to make this an official recognized holiday. And I think that would be amazing. So I am
That guys.
I'm 100% all for this.
Sure.
Mothman Day. So yeah, that happened on this day 55 years ago. It ended up getting really crazy. I mean, the mallets. So Linda and Roger Scarberry, Linda Linda was very vocal about this, and she was definitely very terrified of the Mothman. But she would go on to do all kinds of interviews and make appearances, and really, I mean, she would really talk about it, because Linda had maintained that throughout her life, or throughout her and Roger's life going forward. They they still saw this thing
Mm-hmm.
continuously, and they had weird what they called poltergeist activity in their home, things like that. But she said that, as terrifying as it was, she always just kind of, she believes that whatever this thing is was just trying to communicate, and it didn't know how. um the mallets, on the other hand, I went to, what was that? Oh, Braxy Bazaar. And when I went to the Braxy Bazaar, I spoke with George Dudding. And George Dudding, I know I'm dropping lots of names here. He was actually present during the Silver Bridge collapse. And George has since then gone on. He's written all kinds of books. You can go find his books everywhere. Get them on Amazon. They're great books. He doesn't believe that the Mothman is tied to the Silver Bridge collapse at all. But again, he was a witness to it. He was there when it happened. But George Dunning clued me in on the fact that the mallets are still around. They're still alive, and they've never talked about it ever again. Now they did, and initially they had maintained, like, yeah, people think we're crazy, but we're not. We know what we saw, and but since then they've never made any public appearances, and never sold any books, never sold any interviews, anything like that. They won't talk about it, and they won't. So it is very interesting. I know roughly about where they live, which I'm not going to share that information. But I don't know. I don't know what they saw. Obviously, I believe they saw a Mothman, but very interesting.
What's your
So,
take on the connection to the bridge collapse? Because I know that is something that's hotly debated. I think friend of the show Tobias Wayland has gone publicly and said that he doesn't think that the two are connected at all. And I mean, you're welcome to disagree with him. It's not like you
sure.
have to. But what's your take on that?
Oh no, I definitely don't think that they're connected at all. I mean, the bridge collapse was something that was, kind of popularized by Keel, and even then, kind of a weird take for Keel to assume that they were connected. I have no idea why that was thought. I guess because Keel thought it was some. I mean, he was trying to build this harbinger of doom story, and I don't think that at all. Actually, when I went on Tobias and Emily have a show called Investigating the Impossible. I did an interview with them. You guys can go check that out. On their podcast, and we talked about kind of what I think the Mothman is, and as people will find out, eventually, and of course that's one of the number one question. I think it's quite the opposite. I don't think it's a weird harbinger of doom. I think it's more of a harbinger of growth. If anything, being somebody who believes that they've seen it as well, and adding that up to the timeline events of my life, and like talking to people who have had these very Mothman encounters are very personal. They're very introspective,
Mm-hmm.
and they definitely change your life. And so whenever you have major growth in your life, typically it's because you've grown due to astronomical events in your life. So it's because negative things happen that and ultimately turn you into a better person. As weird as it sounds, you don't usually do a lot of growing when you're doing well. Usually it's because you've done so bad and you decided, well, I don't want to feel this way anymore, so I'm going to do something different. And when you do something different, then things start to change. So I believe that people see this thing, and for whatever reason, it kicks off a series of events in your life that seem like they're bad, but then they end up being the best possible outcome that you could ask for. And so, oddly enough, that's what I think. I mean, if we even tie it to the bridge collapse at all, which I don't think it has anything to do with each other, the Mothman was never seen at the bridge. Never. That was never, none of the reports are him on the bridge or at the bridge or around the bridge or
Right.
anything like that. But if you do want to make some type of loose tie based off of things that we do know, and like I said, what I do know is that people that see this thing don't just go, "Oh, I saw a Mothman," and that was the end of it. Absolutely not. Their entire life changes. But if that's what we're basing it off of, then when the Silver Bridge collapsed, it was a big deal to infrastructure and how we built bridges going forward and engineering, which ultimately, what does that do? That ends up being better, right? We learn from it. It was horrible because all those people had to die, but
Mhm.
at the same time, like I said, we
Yeah,
wouldn't
you
have
wanna make an omelet, you
realized.
gotta break a few eggs. What are you gonna fucking do? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right. So, anyway, that's what I think. That's my little Mothman spiel. But I don't know, Pat. What do you think about the? I'm sure you're familiar now a little bit with this sighting that happened 55 years ago. What do you think of that particular incident? Oh, okay. I guess you don't have an opinion on it. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. You're gonna have to edit that probably. What did you ask me?
What do you think about the Scarberry mallet sighting?
You know, I guess it's there's something about this case that's like galvanized so many people. Like if you look at the sightings and the amount of press that it got, I mean it's almost like comparable to Roswell. And I can't think
Oh
of
yeah,
one other cryptid sighting that's gotten that much attention. And I don't know necessarily why. Like I think if you've heard enough of these stories by now, you realize that there's been bigger flaps and more witnesses and
sure.
more salacious like encounters than this. But the Mothman is one of those OGs, and he's an OG for a reason. And it's because there's something about it that just people latch onto, and I don't think you could fuck with that.
I like the way that you describe it. When you describe some of these stories, it's very sexy. The
Right.
Mothman is very sexy, so you're right about that. It's- I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased, but that's because this is what I do, the Mothman stuff. But it's I there's a reason for it. I mean, that's what I tell people. I didn't believe in the Mothman when I started doing this. Even at that point in my life, I had seen it, but I didn't know that that's what it was.
Yeah.
I had never made that connection before, and but I mean, I was a big skeptic. I'm like that's just ridiculous because was very much into flesh and blood science. This wasn't a Bigfoot. Yeah, hell yeah, yeah. I mean, I bought Bigfoot all day long. A big monkey. Yes, I believe that. Lake monster. Sure, we don't know what the fuck's in the water. Absolutely, a Mothman. No, 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 no.
Hmm.
But then things started happening in my life that defied scientific explanation, and here we are. So anyway, so very interesting stuff. I would love to talk to the Mallets one day, especially knowing that they are still around. I don't know if that will happen, but we'll see. I'm hopeful. So if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be me. So we'll see how it goes. So if you know the Mallets, please give them my phone number, and not the 77359 weird. Give them my actual phone number. Have them call me. But anyway, that was really all I had this week for the news. It ended up being a very slow news week, which is fine because it sounds like we needed a break to kind of talk about some more personal matters. So
Yeah, no bridge collapses, no one,
no, not this week.
that's all good.
I mean, there's stuff, but just nothing really notable. I guess I don't know. If I can do your research, I'm not the news. I guess I am the news, but I'm not the news anyway. Um, so as you guys know, I'm excited. I'm excited for this week's topic. This is a really good one, and this is also another very personal one to me. Probably because of how close it is, but not just that. I'm gonna kind of show some things that I've come across in my research that I don't really get a lot of chance to talk about, and mostly it's because I don't want to feel like, and I'll mention why, but I don't want anybody to feel like I'm stepping on their toes with research when it comes to this topic. Now, again, that's silly because nobody has you can't copyright these things, right? No, nobody owns the rights to this stuff. Well, maybe some of it, but nobody owns the weird and unexplained. I mean, that's just the way it is. So,
Hmm.
fuck it. But in case you haven't noticed, we're going to talk about the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. What did you know about this before I brought it up as a topic?
Oh, I was well versed in it. This is
Okay.
yeah, this is like one of the big ones,
It's a big one for you.
and right, because you go back to sexy stories.
Sure.
This is one of the sexiest, and it's I mean, if I won't get into the whole movie thing right now, but this is something that it's a story that we've seen shades of try to make its way into Hollywood movies several times, and especially with Steven Spielberg. And there's a reason why. It's because it's very captivating. It's very cinematic. It's got shades of Gremlins meets Assault on Precinct 13 meets Rio Bravo. It's,
Sure.
you know what I mean. It's a good story. It's just a good story to tell. Now, how much it has to do with actual extraterrestrials or close encounters or any of that, who knows? And I've heard a couple theories about what it could have been or what some more terrestrial explanations are. But this is a big one, and you don't have to get too far into, strange tales of the unknown to come across this one and have it lodge itself in your memory banks.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. This is definitely a very it's got one of those elements again, and it's got a lot of witnesses. And I feel like, the more witnesses you have to an event, the more credible it deems itself to be. And so, that's a very interesting, and it's left its impact for sure, and it's comparable to other very notable one-off sightings, and we'll get into that. But what is it, what is the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter? So it was 1955. There was a family, well, there was a blended family living in a farmhouse, but they also had friends visiting at the time. And within this incident, there were 8 adults and three children, and the children weren't super young. The youngest was 7, the oldest was 12. So they were old enough to know what was going on. So anyway, this guy, Billy Ray Taylor, was visiting his friend Elmer Sutton, who it was his house. He lived there with his mother and some other people. Anyway, again, a lot of people at this house. He went outside and he went to the well to go get some water. And when he did that, he saw a UFO. Saw this big UFO fly across the sky, kind of went behind the farmhouse a little bit of a ways and landed. Or at least it went down into the tree line. And he ran into the house and was just kind of freaking out, was telling everybody, oh my God, I saw a UFO. And everybody kind of laughed. They're like, no, you didn't. And, they were just kind of like, okay, my guy. And so an hour later, the dog starts freaking the fuck out. And so Billy and Elmer, actually they call Elmer Lucky, so I'll call him Lucky. Billy and Lucky, they grab their guns because this is Kentucky, and on the border of Kelly and Hopkinsville, which is BFE. And they go outside ready to start shooting at things. And instead of like an intruder, they saw this little 3 to 4 foot tall creature that had a big round head, big giant ears, big yellow glowing eyes, and it was kind of standing there with its hands up, like, I surrender, like you would do with the gun pointed at you. And but then it was walking towards them, and as it walked towards them, they shot it. They insist that they shot not at it, but they shot it. And instead of going down, this thing did a backflip and then went out into the woods. And then this kicked off hours and hours of what the family describes as torment from these things. These creatures, which they say there was about 12 to 15 of them, were peeking in the windows. They were climbing on the ceiling and banging on doors and just running around the house and being all, generally weird. At one point, Billy, I believe it was Billy, had walked outside, and when he did that, over top of the awning, a little hand reached out and started touching on his hair, and so he ran back in. They continued to shoot at these things, and nothing happened. They were floating around outside, and it was terrifying. So after about 4 hours of this going on, the family piles into the car and they go up to the local police station and they say, hey, these fucking things are after us, have been terrorizing us for hours. We need help. We've been trying to, shoot them. Nothing's happening. And so the police go out there and they found absolutely nothing except some bullet holes in the walls and shit. And then they left. And at this point, probably about another hour after the police had left, the creatures that returned again only stayed not as long, but they did hang out and terrorize the family a little bit more, and then they were gone. That is the gist of this incident, and we'll kind of get into details. But up front, did I miss anything?
No, I mean that's pretty much it right there.
Basically, the story. So, a couple of factors, and we'll kind of, backtrack. The family ended up leaving. I'm sorry, I didn't mention this. The family up and left 10 days later, after the incident happened. And for numerous reasons. And, we'll talk about that. But the daughter, Lucky's daughter, goes on to maintain the family story. They actually have a festival every year for the Kelly Green Men, or the Little Green Men or whatever. They have this Green Men festival, and she helps run it, and she talks and things like that. But yeah, so one of the things that people had insisted about this story, obviously, when the police heard it, they thought, they didn't believe them at first. When they went to the police station. But these people were really genuinely terrified of whatever it was they were talking about. So they figured, okay, something must be going on. And they went. They recorded that one of the adult men, I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it's recorded who it was, but one of them had a heart rate of over 140. And, they didn't believe that anybody had been drinking. There was no signs at the house that they were drinking. But some people believe that they were just drunk and saw these things. Or, some people think that what they saw were, owls, great horned owls, or things that I guess could be logical answers, but it doesn't make very good sense. They say when they shot at these things, it wasn't that the bullets weren't hitting them, that they were just bad shots and they were missing, because I promise you, these are Kentucky boys, they're not missing. They said that when the bullets hit the bodies, it sounded like shooting at a metal bucket. And that's what they were saying about the bodies. It's kind of a big misconception that these are little green men, or they call them, the little green men, because they weren't green at all. They were metallic. They were silver. And so that's interesting. And we've kind of talked about this, like, we've kind of mentioned it a little bit before when we talk about Travis Walton's Fire in the Sky and how he sees the suits. And like, I've always kind of wondered if maybe that was a possibility, that they were wearing suits.
Yeah, they have kind of there's a lot of things about this story that are believable, and there's a lot of things about the story that are not believable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that unfortunately falls under the non-believable category is the description of them, right?
Okay.
Because this is not a classic UFO alien look. This is not, they're not the Greys necessarily.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not necessarily reptilians, kind of. They're this weird hybrid that we don't get a lot of we don't get a lot of reports of, and I think that, this is something we talk about on the show from time to time, but
Yeah.
they're almost, you want there to be an element of consistency in these stories if they're going to be believed. Like, it is entirely, like, if you open yourself up to the realm of possibility that, like, yes, there's multiple, like,
Species.
species of aliens that are traveling through space, then maybe on this particular night in this particular location, species whatever came down and they haven't been back since, or they're not as prevalent, as these other races that people claim to see all the time. There could be multiple species flying around and all it's very similar craft, but there, and that's just what this is. Now I gotta say, for them to get the kind of response from the police and the army and the
Oh yeah,
state
because it
troopers,
wasn't just like one police officer that showed up.
right?
They
So
called the army in, the Air Force in.
that tells me that when they showed up at the police station, they told such a convincing story, and that they presented themselves in such a convincing way that they literally came out with all this fucking firepower. Like, they
Right.
elicited that kind of response from the authorities. So that tells me that, like, they didn't just it wasn't just a couple hill rods showing up fucking shit faced. Because if that was the case, you would have maybe gotten one cop going out there. All right. But when you have 4 city police, 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, 4 military police from the nearby U.S. Army, like that tells me that like whatever they said, whatever they did, whatever was already known to be going on in that area that night, there was an element of believability to their story at the time.
Right.
Um, the whole owl explanation, I don't believe. That to me seems like too big of a fucking leap in logic. I think that these weren't people on vacation. They weren't staying at an Airbnb in Kentucky. They were
Right.
they were from the area. I
Right. They've seen
expect
an owl.
Yes, I would expect them to know the flora and fauna very well.
Right.
You would think so. However, once again, we got a lot of stories about alien encounters, and they don't normally sound like this.
Well, and so like, that's another thing to mention. I mean, even though it was 1955, some things that are of note to take in here is like the guy was going out to the well. 1955 wasn't uncivilized times. Like they had plumbing and like things like that. This family though they didn't own a TV. Like they were very much, backwoods. They weren't into like reading science fiction novel. Like they weren't into that kind of thing. Like so it's not like we kind of when we discussed the Betty and Barney Hill case, we kind of talked about whether or not a lot of people think that the Outer Limits might have influenced this story because they might have seen that. These people probably died never knowing what the fuck the Outer Limits was, so they just weren't into that type of thing. So to make up a story like this was very interesting. I know the matriarch of the family was very much kind of a recluse. She wasn't about the limelight. She didn't want that. And again, 10 days after this incident happened, the family up and left.
Yeah, but then a couple generations later, they're throwing fucking festivals about it.
They are throwing festivals about it. You're right.
That's something like them leaving. That sounds believable. Them throwing a carnival in its honor every year. That makes it sound non-believable. That's legitimately people cashing in. Now that could be.
Well, the daughter wasn't there. She wasn't alive when that
that's
happened.
what I mean. That it could be. Hey, granddaughter's cashing in on some shit that grandpa went through.
Sure.
That fucking shit happens. But
Right.
like, I don't know. I think that there's I don't know where to land on this one because there's so many of the like character moments are there that make it seem believable. People do believable things that you would really expect people to do in this situation.
Sure.
But then how do you reconcile the fact that these are some oddball fucking aliens, man? And
Well,
like,
what was the point? Like, what were they doing? Like, they were just there
right,
to just fuck with this family because they never, if they wanted to enter the house and there's 15 of them, they could have. And they're impervious to bullets, then why wouldn't they go in the house?
yeah.
What were they doing?
Well, and this whole thing, to get too far into the movie stuff right away, but like it was ended up being the basis for the movie Gremlins. And if you think about the way that they're fucking with the family, it very much seems like the movie Gremlins.
It's
Where
kind of
like,
cutesy, right?
right, and it's like, what's that about? Like, why would you?
Right.
You're a spacefaring civilization, and you're gonna fly here to Kentucky to like, poke someone's head in when they. I don't know. It seems
Yeah.
kind of goofy. That's when the story starts to fall apart. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, why? I mean,
Right.
what's the motivation? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any, and I agree with that. I think that is a very odd, that is very strange, but other people had reported seeing strange lights in the sky that night. So I think that's why, I don't think that's why, I know that's why the military got involved. This case is documented in Project Blue Book, which they just didn't really do anything with. They well, of course, which none of the, it's not like questions were answered anyway in Project Blue Book, but it was investigated by the military. And, but again, like I said, other people had seen other strange lights in the sky. Neighbors did report hearing the gunshots, so they were shooting at something, and something happened. But the other part of this, and kind of what blew, and I kind of hate to bring it up, but kind of what blew the I guess Kentucky Goblins is what people are calling them now, out of the water, and what has kind of relit that fire in people is this Hellier series, which I've talked about before on the show. I'm sure a lot of you have watched Hellier. If you haven't yet, sure, go ahead. Absolutely go ahead. Pat, you haven't watched Hellier yet, have you?
No, it's on my bucket list for when I'm recouping. Cowboy
Yeah,
Bebop and Hellier. There you
yeah,
go.
you be getting it. Cowboy Bebop, that's a good one. Anyway, so, um, yeah, so the whole basis of the show is that they are investigating this specifically this guy. Okay, so it's based off of Greg and Dana Newkirk mostly, and they are paranormal investigators. And they had received an email from some guy named David Christie who claimed to live in Hellier, Kentucky. And what he said was that nightly he was being terrorized by what basically he described as goblins. And he had pictures of these alleged goblins. He had pictures of footprints, three-toed footprints of these things. And it's very reminiscent of the Kelly Hopkinsville incident. And they kind of go on this wild goose chase to find this man, and they never do. Spoiler alert. He probably never even existed. But it
Is
kind of
this
presents.
is this a
Yeah,
documentary? Is this like a narrative? Is it what is
yeah,
this?
it's a show. Yeah, it's a show. It's on season 2.
It's
It's
a
a
documentary or
it's
no?
a docu series. Yeah.
So based on real people.
Oh yeah, this is real. Yeah, this is, well, I don't know if it's real, but yeah, I mean 100% based on real people. Yeah, these are actual investigators, investigating this type of thing. So yes, the David Christie guy that they got the email from, that allegedly is a real person. Supposedly, they can't find him, but or at least they haven't yes yet. But maybe is his name David Christie? I'm pretty sure it is. I can't really remember. I'll be honest with you. I don't remember. I haven't watched it in a long time. Well, we could talk about it more off the air, but just watch it. Um, but like I said, it kind of renewed all this because you had another story of similar creatures kind of within the same area. It's not exactly within the same area, I'll tell you that. It's on two different sides of Kentucky, but both in Kentucky. But very reminiscent. And then, they kind of go on to mention other things that are kind of strange. Um, what's weird about these goblins, is I guess what I'll call them, is that I have a report of somebody who, and this was before I got into any of this. One of my friends she moved. We actually drove her to West Virginia, and she moved to West Virginia, and she says that she saw this weird small humanoid thing, goblin thing in West Virginia, and other stuff. Other stuff has also happened. Hopkinsville is right where it's right by the land between the lakes. And we've kind of talked about the land between the lakes a little bit, and we're probably going to talk about it very soon in a future episode. But the land between the lakes is known for, allegedly, in the 80s, there was a family murdered by a dog man there. Okay, so I had gotten really interested in this story about this family that was massacred by a dog man, and it was covered up by the government. I get really invested in it, and I had started investigating the land between the lakes. And in my own research, we found some really strange things that just also kind of fall under this umbrella of, general weird high strangeness. And including one of the things, I was talking to somebody about it, and I don't remember who it was. It was really late at night. Okay, I remember that. It was probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the phone talking to somebody, and I'm like, how far away is this place from me? Because I haven't found evidence of this family murdered by a dog man. But I want to go there, and I'm in Ohio. I'm like, how far away is this place? So I Google it while I'm talking to them. And when you Google a place, when you pull up Google Maps and you Google anywhere, right? There is a little graph, and it tells you roughly if the place is busy or not. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen this. So it'll tell you, like, there's like your time slot for what time it is right now is always highlighted in like a hot pink color to show you how busy it is right now, right?
Sure.
And then throughout the day, it shows, when their busiest times are. So when I Google the land between the lakes and I find out it's like 2 hours away, And again, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I see that little graph, and at that time, where I was right then and there, the bar for my time is completely full to the top, completely to the top pool. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Why is it so fucking busy right now at 1 o'clock in the morning? But I didn't think anything of it because technology's weird, right? Maybe it was a glitch. That's fine. So about 2 weeks later, Anne comes over and we're doing research, and we're just talking about other things. But I'm starting to tell her about this land between the lakes thing because that's Anne's shit right there. Is history. So I start cluing her in, so she knows what. Basically, I tell Anne what to do, and she does it, and she's good at it. But I'm explaining it to her. While I'm explaining it to her, she's like, "Well, where is this place at?" So we Google it, right then and there, and we look. And oddly enough, it happened to be about the same time. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning at that time when I was telling her about it. And the same thing. It's fucking hopping right now over at the land between the lakes. It is just so busy over there. So, we're looking at it and we're like, that's very interesting that, I'm like, that's weird. Why does it say it's so busy there right now? Why does it say that continuously? The last 2 times it said that at this time. Isn't that weird? And Anne's like, well, I don't know. Let me figure out how Google gets that number to begin with. I'm like, cool, that's a good idea. So, since then I've logged on and I check it, right? And I check the little graph and I see where it's at every little bit, and it's normal, except between the hours of midnight and 1 a.m. And it's not everybody's phone that does this. It's because I've had other people test it at that time. And what we've since found out is that the way Google gets these numbers is based off of cell phone towers. So if you're within a vicinity of a place, Google knows exactly where you are, and it can kind of track how many people are in one area because of where your cell phone is pinging off of. Well, first of all, the land between the lakes is a nature reserve, so a lot of people don't have their phones out there. They don't have service out there like that. Some people do, I'm sure, and it's not like a complete dead zone. But what is it picking up at between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. to get that kind of reaction all the time? And again, it's not everybody that gets that reading. So it was just weird. Was that something super spooky and super strange? No, not at all. But I mean, that's the story of the life of an investigator. It's just little things like that don't really make much sense. But again, Hopkinsville is located right outside of this area where all this weird stuff happens. And these little tiny humanoids are things that people just kind of talk about back in these hollers as if they are common knowledge. And you kind of get that, that's one thing that Hellier does good. No, I have a lot to say about Hellier. Maybe we'll break it down one day. But there's a lot of things that they get wrong. But the one thing that they do get right is that the culture in these areas is that it is just common knowledge that these things roam around back there. And they live underground, and they come, they live here. They're not aliens. They live here. And, or maybe they come in and out of portals, or, who knows, but they're here and people see them all the time in these areas. So, I mean, is that what this encounter was? Is it the same thing? Was it the same creature? I don't know. But that's another angle I think that is interesting to look at, but,
Jesus Christ. Now, when I went to when we were in Kentucky this summer, I had my gun on me the entire fucking time.
Smart.
Yes,
but it sounds like it wouldn't matter anyway.
Well, I don't know. No one got fucking snatched.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
They held them off. Yeah. You have fun at Crypticon this weekend. Jesus.
I know, right? I didn't even think about that. I'm going to be in
fucking house.
Fuck. But this is going to be great advertising for everybody that I meet at Crypticon.
Oh my god! How far away is Crypticon? Like the Airbnb you guys are staying at? Is that
2 hours? Oh, from me? Oh, from Hopkinsville?
Yeah.
I have no idea. That's a really good question. I don't know. I'll look into that.
Someone's gonna get snatched. Someone's gonna
probably
take the garbage out and not come back.
I'm gonna look it up. I don't think it. I mean, I don't know how close it is. I'll look it up. Maybe we'll go hang out there. Kentucky's another big one that we have to go investigate thoroughly because again, it's just this fucking area is weird.
Lots of coal mines, lots of underground caverns and shit there.
Oh yeah. Oh, one of the biggest. What is it? Not mountains. I guess the caverns. What is it down there? That's huge.
Coal,
Oh my
coal mines. I
gosh.
mean, I remember
I
from
guess it is, yeah.
what's it called, from Justified. You know, it makes you almost wonder. The story suddenly becomes a little bit more believable if you look at all the shit that I bitched about 5 minutes ago, whatever, when we were talking about this. If you take the extraterrestrial component out of the story, it's a little bit more believable.
Makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's not a super advanced species. It's a weird, it's like the descent people, you know.
Or it's they seem kind of Fey-like they're little tricksters, and they're kind of, they're not
Well,
necessarily up to, they're not trying to abduct anyone. They're not trying to
yeah.
take.
Well, sort of. Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say too. The biggest legend within coal mines are the Tommyknockers, which are, little weird humanoid, you know, mine dwelling little guys that don't necessarily cause issues. I mean, sometimes seeing a Tommy knocker, it can be a sign of bad luck, but a lot of these coal miners also reported them being good luck as well because they'll warn them. That's why they call them Tommy knockers. They'll knock along the walls of the mine to let them know that something's dangerous or something's off. As long as you feed them, so they would give them their scraps. They'd throw the scraps down the mine shaft, and then allegedly the Tommy knockers would eat them. But that also correlates, even though, it's called something of a different name. I would think that it would still probably be the same creature. It sounds similar. So I don't know. Very interesting stuff. But you're right. I agree with that. When you take the extraterrestrial element out of it, it does become a little bit easier to bite off and chew. Um, because that makes a little more sense if they're not, because you'd have to be an intelligent species to travel here. But if they're not an intelligent species and they're just kind of fey folk, or just an underdeveloped type of humanoid, then that would make more sense for the playfulness because it doesn't sound like they were trying to hurt anybody. Because if they wanted to, they could have, but they didn't. They just fucked off and floated through the trees and did backflips and touched on some guy's hair. Yeah.
Going back to the Tommy knockers real quick. I know I never told you this story, but I left film school because I had a dream about them once, and I wrote it up for a paper for class. It was the name of the class was idea development, and we had to write about a dream that we had. And the dream that I had, it was a dream that I had around that time, and it started off with a guy, um, kind of mining on the outside of a cliff in California, and it was like if it was the opening scene of a movie, the title card would say like California 1874 or something, right? And there was a guy rappelling off the side of a cliff, and he was using dynamite to blow holes in the cliff and then look for gold or look for mineral deposits, right? And in the process of doing this, he's like, mining and blowing holes and shit. While he's kind of hanging off the side of this cliff doing this, uh, a hand comes out from the cliff and like cuts the guy's rope, and he falls and he dies. Right, and
Oh,
that
okay.
that that was like the opening scene. Cut to modern day, and it was myself and another guy sitting in traffic, and we were like Secret Service agents or something, and we were in Washington D.C., and which is on obviously the other coast. So we go from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, and we're sitting in traffic, and there's a construction crew doing, they're working on a sewer main or something, and there's this big explosion. A bunch of steam comes out, and a bunch of construction workers start crawling out of the manholes and stuff. And we're stuck in traffic. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? And suddenly this like huge swarm of these little dwarves come up from, it's like subterranean, like come up through the sewers and start overrunning all the cars in traffic. And they have these like giant battle axes, and they start killing all the people in the cars. And me and my partner get out because, like I said, we're like Secret Service agents or something. We start shooting these things, and there's a big battle in the streets and all this shit. And the narrative that I rationalized after the fact, after I woke up, was that there was this race of subterranean beings that had been were native to this land before we got here, and through our urbanization, we've kind of forced them all over the United States to have to live underground. And we finally pushed them all the way back to the East Coast. And like this was like We finally pushed them out where there's nowhere else for them to go, and now they were going to come up from underground and attack the humans, and that's what was happening in this dream. And the class was movie idea development, and it had to be something based on a dream that we had. So I was like, well, this dream I think would make an interesting movie, right? Because I mean, it's kind of like an interesting story.
Yeah.
And I wrote it up, and my teacher accused me of plagiarism. He goes, "You didn't dream
What?
that." Yeah, well, this guy was fucking. He was a teacher at Columbia, so obviously he was destined for great things. And I don't remember this guy's name, but I feel fairly confident saying he never went on to make fucking anything. Right? I'm sure at the time he thought like, "Oh, I'm doing idea development now, but in 5 years I'm going to be winning an Oscar." And I'm pretty sure the guy never did.
He never
But
did.
no, of course not. But yeah, so the dude was just an asshole, but and we got in a big fight about it. But there's something about that story that always stuck with me, and even now, 20 years later, I can recount it like off the back of my hand.
Well,
So
sure.
yeah, I think that's an interesting lens to view this, the Hopkinsville goblins through. As what if we just throw the UFO thing out and just say that these things were subterranean based or they were fae? You know what I mean? I think it makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's other like small weird stuff, centering around it, which I mean, it's not science. It's not scientifically based, or at least any science that we have right now that makes it make any sense. But like the first UFO that I ever saw, and I've told this story before, but the first UFO that I ever saw, and I'm scared of aliens. I'm sure I've said this before too on the show, and I know that sounds ridiculous
No, it
because
doesn't. It sounds like it
but I'm scared to death of aliens.
It's completely rational. Of course, they can just like overpower you instantaneously. Like there's no battle, there's no struggle.
Exactly.
They just like look at you and then like you're paralyzed. Like
Well,
fuck.
right, and that's a reality that I've thought about. Pat, you and I have talked about it because I've talked about getting close to somebody really in particular, and the reality of me meeting these aliens and what that would mean, and if they did, it sounds crazy, but yeah, and I think we talked about it on the show, if I did go on their planet, what does that mean? But I'm scared of them. And so the first time I ever saw a UFO was 18, and I was sitting outside. I lived at my parents' house, and I was sitting outside and I was smoking a cigarette, and I saw these huge slow moving, they look like headlights, that they were kind of, it was weird because the way they were moving, like I said, they looked like headlights, but they were like wobbling kind of back and forth. And that's like how it was moving. And it kind of came up over the tree line and then up over the house, and it left. Made no noise, none at all. And they weren't fucking lanterns. This was probably 2009, 2000, maybe 2010. So it wasn't drones. It was weird, and it scared the shit out of me. So I went inside. I'm scared. And so, but I was kind of into this stuff at the time a little bit. And there was this website that I knew of that was like a forum that you could go on and see people's, see people reporting UFO sightings or whatever. And and it was specific to Ohio. And I wanted to see, if anybody else had seen this and if anybody else had reported it. I want to share my own story. But it wasn't like a forum. It was just like entries. Like you couldn't comment on stuff. It was just like entries. I can't find the website again.
It's like a message book or something.
Kind of, yeah, like an online guest book, basically.
Yeah,
UFO sightings. And I'm reading through the encounters, and I'd kind of read it over the course of a couple of days because again, it is all of Ohio, and it was updated very regularly. And when I was reading about it, I came across one person's entry that was begging for help. And what they were saying was that they were located. They lived in this really middle of nowhere town. I can't remember where in Ohio, and we have that. We got farmland here, and they were being terrorized by these little 4-foot tall humanoid creatures outside of their home. They felt like they were trapped in their home. They couldn't leave. They needed somebody to come help, and that scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh, I'm done. And because I don't know, could it have just been some fuckwad on the internet putting something out there because it's the internet? You can, sure, absolutely. But could it be somebody that was genuinely calling for help because they were being terrorized by these humanoids, especially in an area where these humanoids have been reported to exist otherwise? or at least as we know of now, it absolutely could have been. But that always also reminded me of the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter
Yeah,
because it was very similar.
they could have been on drugs too. Like if that was
Absolutely, they could have been.
if that was actually happening, I granted like in the Kelly Hopkinsville case, it was the 1950s, it was pre-internet, but even those people had enough sense back in the day to go to the fucking police.
Right.
Like, that's one of the linchpins of their story was that they went to the police and they got a whole bunch of attention. Um, if you're in a situation where there's unknown creatures outside your house trying to get in and they're terrorizing you, and your instinct is to go post about it online. Um, I mean, I guess I could potentially see now that I think about it, I could see myself tweeting during that, like getting on Twitter. But if
Yeah. Sure.
especially if I was fucked up, I think there might have been some kind of chemical situation going on there as well. Like they were on drugs and they thought something was outside the house trying to get in. You
That
know.
could have been. I mean, that's a very real possibility. Now, 18-year-old me did not know that. No, I think I've shared this story before on the show too. But that UFO encounter that I had, I'll tell this story. That UFO encounter that I had, I ended up telling that to somebody. I had found a post on Craigslist,
Hmm.
and for people that don't know what Craigslist is, you can go on there and buy stuff and people and other things. It's a very shady place. Um,
A couch, a car, a blowjob, fucking
Anything, right? Exactly. But
There's
I
things for selling too. You can get rid of CDs, DVDs,
all kinds of stuff.
blowjobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was on Craigslist. This was probably about 2 years after I'd seen this thing. But I came across a post from a film student that went to Wright State University, which has a film department. It's a big film school here. Um, and they were looking for people to share their alien and UFO encounters because they were making a film for their class about, aliens or whatever. And they were looking for people. So I answered. I was like, okay, well, I've seen a UFO. Yeah, I'll share that. And so, I emailed the guy. We met up at a coffee shop here locally at, a very, public place. And, I shared my story. I shared my story about what I saw. Wasn't a big deal. Um, but then a couple of years later, and I know it was a couple of years because when I saw the guy, when I went and talked to him, I went with my husband, so I was married. And this was after I was out I was out of my marriage. A couple of years later, the same exact fucking post is posted. I'm a film student at Wright State University. I'm looking for people to share their UFO and alien encounters with me because I'm making a film on it. And that was weird to me. So it makes me wonder, did I encounter the new age Men in Black? What was this? Maybe it was just another person who's into this stuff and they're an investigator. They don't know how to ask, so they put it as a front as if they're in film school. I don't know. Maybe it's just an enthusiast.
How many years were in between?
I would say probably at least 3. Can't tell you exactly how many years were in between, but I would say at least 3.
Oh, dude, I went to community college for like 6 years. I mean, that's not unheard of. No, I mean, I think it's
The
definitely.
same project?
Yeah, I mean,
The same film project.
how
Because,
long you been working on that fucking Mothman documentary for?
well, you're right. But to say it's for school?
No,
Oh,
I
freaking
know. No, I think it's entirely possible. That's probably like when you think about it, that is like the easiest psyop, or like, you know what I mean?
cover,
Like,
right.
yes, way to collect people's stories and just kind of like I would almost think that would be like a not like a initiation, but if you were in the CIA, like this is something that you have to do like your first year. Like it's one of the, like your first assignments is just to go make a post, see who shows up, see what info just falls in your lap, and you never know. You know what I mean? Maybe it leads to something, maybe it leads to nothing. I mean, if the book I was talking about last episode about this disinformation campaigns, about how a lot of times some of these campaigns started because civilians came across operations or information or something that wasn't UFO related, but to mask what it was really being used for, they came up
Sure.
with the UFO cover story. And I could see that too. Like,
Sure.
or you guys being in the area of the Wright Patterson Air Force Base,
Well,
where they
exactly. Wright State is used to be a part of Wright Pat.
yeah, where it could be like, you know what? Let's just see what people are seeing out there. Let's
Right.
throw this out there and see how much of our experimental craft that we're trying to n- keep a little, have fly under the radar, so to speak. Let's see how much is actually getting spotted and how many UFO sightings we're creating with these test projects and stuff.
Right. And I
Yeah.
don't remember because I actually I believe I told this story on I'm almost positive I've told it here, but I believe I told this story also on Tobias's show when we talked about it there because he was asking me, well, what did it look like? I don't remember. I really don't. And you'd think I would. I mean, but as much as that's a very interesting, very neat thing I guess that I did, but like I don't remember the guy's name. I can't tell you at all what he looked like. So he must have just been very nondescript, which would make sense if you were part of some type of, undercover situation. If you were the new Men in Black, why not?
Right.
Maybe they
You know, it'd
realize,
be
well, shit, we're walking around looking like the Men in Black. People know who the fuck we are. Let's change that,
what'd be interesting is if you had one of your like if you showed up to that, or you arranged a meeting with the guy, and even though word for word it was the same ad, someone completely different showed up to
Right. What would be weirder? It's the same guy or it's a different
no, a
guy. I don't
different guy.
know.
I would almost put money on it being a different person, and it's just an operation that they run. You
Because
know
I've
what I
thought
mean?
about really seeking it out. Once I've really thought about it, I thought about trying to seek it out and figure it out. I guess I could probably talk to some of the professors at the school and see if any of the students have done a film about UFOs and
Well,
go from
there's always the
there.
possibility that the person you were talking to was a professor, and that's why they're still at the school, and that's why the longevity of the project is that for the
Sure,
past 10 years they've been collecting interviews with people, trying to put together a documentary of
and that wouldn't be unheard of,
people's UFO encounters.
right?
But it could also be military intelligence, which is what I would put money on.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. And then another weird thing, just I'll kind of jump around, just because like these things are like it's one of those things. It's what is it? The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever. It's like this feeds into that, which feeds into this, which feeds into that. All these kind of ties that are just weird. They don't really fit anywhere, but they also kind of perfectly fit together. Is the fact that the they've dubbed the house that this happened at, the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. They've dubbed it the Sutton farmhouse because that's the family that owned it, the Suttons. Sutton is where the Flatwoods monster encounter took place. Sutton, West Virginia is the same place, which is another big one off, strange, unexplainable encounter.
hmm
And, again, does it mean anything? I don't know. I guess it just depends. I don't believe in coincidence, so I don't
yeah,
know.
there's something about that area.
It's just, it's all somehow tied in together, but not really tied in together. So what does that mean? Exactly. I mean, when you start really thinking about it in those terms, my original theory was that, um, which I don't necessarily believe this now. And I don't know if I'm going to include my original theories in the documentary or not, but with the Mothman research was that what if the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins, what they were seeing, because they all kind of have this signature thing. They had the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins have these giant um, glowing yellow eyes. And the Flatwoods monster also has giant glowing yellow eyes. The Flatwoods monster, they've also told people that was an owl. There's no way it was 10 foot tall. Like, there's no way. These
Right.
people got severely sick after seeing the Flatwoods monster. It wasn't an owl. um, you know, but there's a similarity there. But what if instead of ears, because you can look at and you guys will see the picture if you see it advertised on social media. I'll share the drawing of what these things look like. What if they weren't ears on the side of its head? Because they did say that they were floating around in the trees and whatever. But if they were wings, and the only portion that they could see were the back of the wings coming up from back, because it was nighttime, they could see it coming up and over the head, and it just made it look like they were ears. And the Flatwoods monster has kind of been described, even though, I mean, looking at it, it looks kind of strange. It still kind of falls in the line of maybe that's a female version of whatever the Mothman is.
Uh,
I think that's a stretch.
yeah, I think that's a stretch. I think that when you start Now there's a Miss fucking Mothman, and it looks like the Flatwood Monster.
But
I
why not?
you know what I would say if I was genuinely researching this, I would the first thing I would do is go back to Native American lore for that area
Oh yeah.
and find out what before strip away UFOs and outer space and all that shit. Go back to the original people and what are their stories from that area. And
Okay.
I think that if you start with that, because this area seems to be a hotbed for activity, and maybe it's just one of these magical areas that exist all over the place where shit comes through, where the veil is thin, and you know odd things find their way through to our world, or maybe I don't know.
I'm
Talk to the
teasing.
Indians.
I'm teasing a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and make another jump and skip and hop here. We're gonna talk about the Wendigo again, but the Wendigo is very much this area also, and the Wendigo is not the stag-headed thing that you see. None of the reports of the Wendigo in Native American lore ever described it that way. And again, we'll talk about that. But the Wendigo is described as this weird, sickly humanoid thing. This very starving. It looks like a person,
Right.
and it's very animalistic and horrifying. The Wendigo, in a lot of Native American culture, right before a Wendigo sighting took place or somebody was possessed by the Wendigo, they would see owls, and they thought that the owls were kind of warning them, letting them know that, hey, a Wendigo is going to pop up again. What do they say the goblins are? What do they say the Flatwoods monster is? And what the fuck does the Mothman actually look like? Owls are all tied into that. Why? And then you have other Native American stories that are weird that I'll get into more at the documentary, but like the flying head. I don't know, Pat, if you ever heard of the flying head, but
No, I mean
look up
it's
look up fucking pictures of that thing. What the fuck does it look like? Looks like the
yeah,
Mothman. That's what it looks like. So it's weird that, how again all of these things kind of hold hands, but there's nothing that definitively says that they're related. So just some weirdness for you. But I digress. We'll get away from that for a minute, and talk about just this in general. I agree with you. I think taking out the extraterrestrial element in the Kelly Hopkinsville incident, I think makes it make a lot more sense, especially anecdotally when you look at these humanoid figures that we have. Then it's not such a one-off incident. Um, People do see these things a lot, but they're not usually associated with lights in the sky. They're usually associated with coal mines or caverns or things like that. And so they're coming from here. They're already here. They've already been here. Um, that does make a little more sense. Did something happen to that family? I believe absolutely something did. Like you said, they must have believed that something was happening,
right.
and in order to drag all those people out there, in order to investigate this. So what was it? They were shooting at something, that's for sure. And I don't think that they were on drugs. I don't think that they were I've been drunk so many times in my life, guys. I got drunk this weekend and I didn't see little goblins peeking through my fucking window. You don't hallucinate when you're drinking. That doesn't happen. Like, that's not part of it. Now, could they have been doing some special moonshine? Sure, but they weren't.
Right.
They weren't. And nothing points to the fact that they were. They saw something and legitimately thought whatever it was very real to them. And, that's what happened.
Were you the one telling me the story that there was a carnival in town that night and that some people think that it was carnies fucking with them?
No.
Oh, somebody told me that story once. I don't know.
No, but okay, so the friend that was there, he was a carny.
Okay.
The guy that said that he saw the UFO, he was the carny. Him and his wife were carnies. They were from Pennsylvania, and they were staying with the Suttons because they were friends, and they were staying there. I think the Suttons might have previously been carnies, and that's how they knew each other.
Uh,
But I've never heard that it was carnies fucking with them.
maybe I just got the story fucked up. But I always thought that was an interesting explanation that, like, over the hill there was a carnival that was in town for the night. and the carnies got drunk and then wandered out in the woods and found this farmhouse and just were screwing with the people. You
Were
know,
they like puppets or something?
I something Chicago story that's kind of similar. Um, there's this camp not too far from here called Camp Sullivan, and it's for
Weird.
people that I know, right? What a sinister name. And for people that are native to Chicago, it's like 147th and Oak Park Avenue, and there's some cabins there. And back in the 70s, there was a Girl Scout troop that spent the night in these two cabins, and in the middle of the night, people started harassing the campers and were banging on the windows and telling them to come out, and if you send one girl out, we'll let the rest of you live, and all this shit, and basically just terrified these girls all night long. And then at sunrise they just kind of left, and traumatized everyone inside both of these cabins. And of course there was no cell phones back then, right? There was no phones or anything like that. These people were just basically stuck out there, and they go to the police and they tell the police what happened. And the police like take this very seriously, and they launch this full investigation, and come to find out it was a couple drunk local teenagers just fucking around. But for the longest time before they solved the case, it was like this big sinister, like, were these girls all almost abducted and they were so vulnerable, and what's the world coming to, and this happened in our own backyard, and who would fuck with Girl Scouts and all this stuff. And it was just some drunk kids that probably never had any intention to do anybody any real harm, and they were just screwing with the campers. But it reminded me of this a little
Well,
bit.
very interesting. Well, I mean, people do fuck with people. That happens. That's not completely unheard of. So, but yeah, that sounds scary.
Definitely. Can I talk about all the movie stuff real quick? So this story was so captivating that when Steven Spielberg tried to make it into a movie twice, once as a sequel to Close Encounters of a Third Kind, and another with the sequel to E.T. And I guess after Jaws happened, the Universal decided to make Jaws 2. And Spielberg was like, no, I don't want to make a sequel to Jaws. Jaws was good. And they went and they made Jaws 2 without him. So he decided that he didn't want them to do that anymore with any of his movies. So when Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a big hit, they came to him and they said, do you want to make the sequel? And he's like, of course I do. Because he knew that if he said no, they would just get some other asshole to do it, right? And the story that he came up with, he didn't want to do like nice aliens again. He thought he would do something more about like sinister aliens, and basically he adapted the story for this. And it was about a family that was stuck at home, and they were terrorized by these monsters, and blah blah blah. And the studio got the script for it, and they were like, yeah, we're not going to do this. Like this is the exact opposite of Close Encounters. But he was at that point, he was able to stall and waste enough time to where they never made a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right?
Okay.
Well, so then he goes and he does Indiana Jones, and then after that he makes E.T. and he takes the script from the Close Encounters of the Third Kind sequel, and it's called Night Skies, right? And he's like, they're kind of in pre-production on this, and I don't know if you know who Rick Baker is. You're kind of a movie person, right? Rick Baker is the guy that did the special effects for like American Werewolf in London,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. So you could see all of the the like screen test stuff online, and the aliens that he was coming up with were absolutely terrifying. They were grays, but they had like human eyes with pupils. And if you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you know that they have these weird elongated limbs, and they're like that. Like they're really fucking
I
scary
feel
looking.
like I've seen them before.
Yeah, so
Definitely.
that was Spielberg. So So then ET's a huge hit, right? So they're going to use this for ET, but then they decide not to, and he wants to do something really heartfelt after Indiana Jones and shit. So he's like, okay. So he does ET, which is all about a good alien. But then ET's a huge hit, and they want to make a sequel. So he's like, all right, well, I got this idea, and it's the same thing, and it was called ET2 Nocturnal Fears, and this time the aliens would have been evil, and they were carnivorous. Are you familiar with the movie ET?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you know how he's like all about the plants, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
like he's there to do like a botanist, right? Well, this is about these albino like mutant aliens, and in the script, you could find the script online. They were like a separate faction from ET's race, and the aliens come to Earth and they take Elliot and his friends hostage, and then like torture them, and there's supposed to be like really fucked up like alien abduction scenes with like Elliot and his buddies, but at the hands of these like gray aliens, and where it's like it borderlines like child torture. Like it's supposed to be pretty fucking bad. And once again, Spielberg's like, "All right, you want you want to make a sequel? Here you go. Here's your sequel." And the studio gets the script and they look at it and they're like we can't fucking do this, right? So at this point, he's threatened to make the movie twice, like almost like purposely like sabotaging it, and it falls apart, right? So then he created Amblin, which was his own production company, right? I think that happened like right around ET, and that was what he made Gremlins through. So Gremlins is him finally making this movie, which all comes back to the Hopkinsville encounter case. And that was him once again, him hearing the story, because like he had made Close Encounters, he knew Jacques Vallée, he was very interested in paranormal and ufology, and he heard about this story, and the story was so like cinematic, this idea of this family, this lone family in this farmhouse fighting off these invaders. Like I said, it's very Assault on Precinct 13, it's very Rio Bravo. Actually, a lot of people say the first Critters movie is kind of an homage to this too. Even though obviously the creature design is completely different. But if you're familiar with the first Critters movie, um, it's a family stuck in a farmhouse fighting off critters, you know. Um, so
I mean, isn't the McPherson tapes basically
yeah, I'm
the same
glad you
thing
brought that
too?
up. Thank you. Yeah, McPherson tapes is basic. Now that is with Straight Up Grays, and that
Yeah.
that is more that is more like textbook alien encounter phenomenon. There's nosebleeds, there's missing time, the kids saying weird shit, like, and they're grays, but it starts off the same way. It's a birthday party, and the power flickers, and they think they see something crash in the woods. They go to investigate with the video camera. They see aliens dissecting cows. They run back to the house. The aliens follow them back to the house, and then but there's not really like a battle. There's a little bit of gunplay, but it's mostly like, because you can't battle, you can't get into a gunfight with grays, you know what I mean? They'll just fucking turn you off psychically, and that's actually what happens in this too. But yeah,
I mean,
McPherson.
but it's like the same kind of
Yes,
concept, right?
yes, very, very easily inspired by this story, you know, and that's why I think we still talk about this story to the day, because it's inspired so many movies. It's got such a great cinematic quality to it. It's such a good narrative, you know.
Right. Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I mean, you can even argue things like maybe Signs has, got some influence from, this encounter, a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere with aliens. I mean, that's basically all you need, right? So to put that tie in together. So I mean, I would agree that yeah, cinematically, it's definitely had a lot of influence. I mean, the story's gotten a lot of reach. And, ultimately that's why the family packed up and moved because people were, now getting on their property and destroying it and taking pieces away from their home. Like, oh, I got some, sighting off the alien house or whatever. And, was because they couldn't stand the heat, so they got the fuck out of the kitchen. I mean, and I think that's another tell as to the validity of this story. At first, they were charging people to tour the house, And the town was pissed off about that. People are like, "Oh, they're not. You're obviously lying to make money off of it." And then that didn't really work out for them. So then they just left. I mean, they were going to try to make something of it, but they were like, "Well, you know what? This isn't working out. We're going to leave," and they did. So I don't know, but yeah, I don't. I don't think I really have anything else to say about it. You got anything else to add?
No, don't go to Kentucky. It's fucking cursed.
Just don't go there. Just don't do it. You will get 411 by little 3 to 4 foot tall metallic aliens coming out of the fucking coal mines in Kentucky.
Your ass is gonna get taken.
Your ass is gonna get taken, and that's all there is to it. I mean, no, very very cool story, very notable. I'm glad that we got around to telling it. What do you guys think of this? I mean, do you think the family saw something? Do you think that they were just drunkards that saw owls? Do you think that maybe we've had it all wrong and they weren't aliens to begin with, and now we're kind of starting to investigate the possibility that they weren't, and that's a good idea? Maybe that's a bad idea. Do you guys think that I should try to find this Craigslist guy? Because I kind of do. And
No, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that you do not need to be meeting guys on Craigslist. I'm not trying to cock block you. This isn't me yucking on your yum, as the
yeah,
kids say nowadays. But no, do not,
yucking my yum. I say that.
do not. You know enough fucking people. You do not need to start meeting fucking dudes off Craigslist.
If you were the Craigslist guy, get a hold of me. And
Fine.
for science, I want to know what your deal is, my guy. Did you ever finish that documentary? I want to watch it. I mean,
Right.
was it any good? But anyway, yeah, that's all I got. So, hopefully, we'll keep you guys updated on Pat's physical condition and his situation for sure. But until then, we'll see you guys next Wednesday.